by virtual through Zoom or through YouTube, pardon me, and from City Council chambers, myself and administration, but a few people are at home right now, so thank you very much. First thing I want to do is read our land proclamation, or land acknowledgement, pardon me. We are pleased to be here today on the official territory of Treaty 6 and the Métis homeland. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We're all treaty people. The peace treaties bind us all. Thank you. One proclamation to make before we go on to 1B, recognition of past service from a couple of councillors on the line tonight with us this evening. Proclamation is Bell Let's Talk Day, January 26, 2022. Whereas January 26, 2022 marks the 12th annual Bell Let's Talk Day, a celebration of conversation and mental health. And whereas Bell Let's Talk Day promotes mental health awareness, acceptance, and action built on 4 key pillars: fighting stigma, improving access to care, supporting world-class research, and leading by example in workplace mental health. And whereas the City of Beaumont encourages its citizens to join the conversation through calls, texts, and social media interactions to drive Bell's donation to mental health past 100 million. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Bill Daneluik, do hereby proclaim January 26, 2022 as Bell Let's Talk Day in Beaumont, dated the 24th of January, 2022. Thank you very much. Next order of business on our agenda is recognition of past service. So I'm very pleased to welcome to our virtual council meeting former councillors Perry Hendricks and Martin Stout. Former Mayor Stewart could not make it this evening, so we miss his attendance. And I have a brief little note to read through and a little prepared statement to make sure we give you guys some recognition here. I'll talk more about a personal note in a moment. So welcome, bienvenue, and thank you for joining us this evening. On behalf of City Council, I'm pleased to honor 3 past members of Council for their contribution to our community over the preceding Council term of 2017 to 2021. Tonight, we recognize former Mayor John Stewart, former councillors Martin Stout and Perry Hendricks. Elected officials provide a valuable service to the community by setting strategic direction for the future, providing valuable insights and advice, and leading governance oversight. You were a part of a council that transitioned Beaumont from a town to a thriving city in 2019 and saw Beaumont ranked by Maclean's as the safest community in Alberta. You stewarded significant investments in recreation, culture, and other services, and making sure that anyone who wants to participate in the community has that opportunity as our population grew at an astonishing pace. Your time on council included the opening of a modernized and expanded Beaumont Sport and Recreation Center. You also contributed to Beaumont's reputation for economic innovation. In 2019, the city hosted a driverless shuttle pilot project integrated with regular traffic, the first of its kind in Western Canada, and private investors are planning an ultra high-speed fiber optic network that will connect every home and business to the fastest internet infrastructure available commercially in the world. In 2021, Council purchased land for the Beaumont Innovation Park to create a place where entrepreneurs and innovators and investors can hold bold ideas to life. As it develops, the park will become home to innovators in fields such as autonomous technology, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and data management. In addition to all the above shared accomplishments, you have represented our city on several boards and committees, contributing to regional prosperity and greater collaboration with our neighbors. Our community and its residents are better off because of your work here in Beaumont. We're thankful for your hard work and support. Thank you and merci. So gentlemen, on behalf of the current council, we want to thank you for your years of service. I know, Martin, you had 1 term and it was a very successful 4 years. Thank you very much. I do miss sitting beside you and your dry sense of humor. I do miss that from time to time, I have to admit. And I wish you, hopefully, all these things going well for you. Perry, I call you Senator out of respect for the years of service you put on City Council. Many terms, as the photographs definitely showed there. I can't thank you enough for your years of service. I know this past Beaumont days, the parade got put together in 1 week because of you driving that force. So that's one small example of your years of service to the City of Beaumont. So gentlemen, I want to thank you for your service. And for the people watching at home, both gentlemen and past Mayor Stewart got these, can you see them in the camera? Perhaps you can. A little acrylic vertical awards of merit and that service. Oh, Martin's got you got yours. Perry, you got yours there. Oh, you do. Okay, great. Wasn't sure you had them in your hands or not yet. So they're a nice little desktop reminder of this years of service to Beaumont. And guys, I want to thank you for that. And I want to make sure this council recognized past service early in our term. In fact, our term began 3 months ago tomorrow, and it's gone by very, very quickly. So you can imagine how fast the next 4 years is going to go. So guys, again, thanks for your service. Much, much appreciation for all your work you've done. And don't be strangers to us around Beaumont, okay? Anything you care to say, either one of you gentlemen by chance, or if you'd like to say something, you're more than welcome to. Perry?
Yeah, thank you. And, you know, it's been 24 years sitting behind the desk there, and certainly a lot of changes from 1991 till now. Truly a remarkable journey, a remarkable experience. All of my kids were part of this process at some point by way of birth or otherwise. And I have a remarkable family. I have an unbelievably remarkable wife who's put up with all the absenteeism and the nights and certainly all the you know, it's as you get into this council role, you'll find that it's a heavily debated position, be it on various topics. And you know, I was not always the most popular guy in town as a result, and you know, certainly got battle scars as a result. So, but I'm thankful that I had the opportunity. I'm thankful I've been able to make a bit of a dent in Beaumont and put a footprint from the family by way of a legacy. And again, thanks to all. Thanks to all the admin teams. I do want to just reach out for a moment here. I don't know if Mr. Mayor, Your Worship, Daneluik, if you will be speaking about Mr. Harris. But of course, we just lost Mr. Harris on Friday, as I understand it, which is a loss. And again, another individual I worked with for many, many years, very, very capable individual and a very nice man. So my condolences to the family. And as you move through this, you'll find that there's a lot of people you will interact with, and a lot of people that you will come to know. So it's a great experience. Thanks again. Thanks to all. And I won't be a stranger. So thank you.
Thanks, Perry. Well said. Mr. Stout, would you make a comment or two if you care to?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. Just simply to say it's my privilege to serve and pleasure to do so. I'm happy to do so again, but if that ever becomes, if I'm re-elected, yep. And I hadn't heard the news of Mr. Harris though, and that's just come as a shock to me. Yes, yeah. I shall be researching that and sending my condolences to the family too. And yes, a thank you to all the admin teams and for all the support and that they gave us that they gave me over the last 4 years, previous 4 years. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. And listening at home, people at home, Perry's referring to Mr. Alan Harris, who was for a number of years a member of our administrative staff here. His last role was Director of Corporate Services. He left a couple of years ago to go to an opportunity in British Columbia, and he came back, I believe, in the last year or so to Alberta and working for a municipality in the area here. And he recently passed away this last Thursday evening, early Friday morning. So our condolences go to his family, and we do have our wishes with them for this difficult time in their lives. So we do appreciate Mr. Harris's past service to the city of Beaumont. So gentlemen, again, thank you for attending this evening. I wanted to do it in person, but I didn't want to wait too much longer to get this in front of you. And your service is much appreciated, and your friendship and your guidance and your good wishes is much appreciated too. So gentlemen, thank you for joining us this evening. You're welcome to stay on if you want to, but we'll go off the agenda, okay? I'm sure you have enough council meetings to last you a while, I'm sure.
I like to move the agenda.
I was just going to ask if you could do that, Perry. I was just going to ask.
I think I set a record for that. So.
Yes, love it.
Okay, we have a moot motion from former Councillor Hendricks. Please raise your hands. Thanks, Perry.
Carried.
All right.
Thank you.
Carried, yeah.
Thanks for the offer.
Right.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys. Appreciate that.
Okay.
All right, we'll move on with our agenda this evening. Part number 2, which is the adoption of the agenda. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Miranda, for this evening's agenda, anything from administration?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no changes to the agenda this evening. However, through you to members of the public, administration would like to note that while all council members are participating virtually this evening, we have administration members present in council chambers, and council chambers remains open to the public for this meeting. Just something I wanted to note, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm also in my office in City Hall, so that gives one of us from council here in the City Hall as well. Thank you very much. Any amendments to the agenda from anybody on council, please? All right, seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Councillor Barnhart, would you care to make that motion?
Certainly, Mayor. I'd be pleased to make that motion to accept the adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, council, please vote with your voting buttons, please. And I'm seeing that is being carried as unanimous. Thank you very much, council. On the consent agenda this evening, we have 3 items. I'll read them out to you. The proposed consent agenda items are 5A, regular council meeting of January 11th, 2022. 7D, as in Donald, temporary suspension of council and subdivision and development appeal board hearings. And 7E, strategic plan Q4 matrix. Is there a council member willing to move the consent agenda as adopted? Councillor Miller, would you care to make that motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can do that. I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Do I have to read those out, Mr. Mayor?
I don't believe so, do we? No, I don't think so. Thank you, Councillor Miller. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. If you'll please vote accordingly, council. And that carries unanimously as well. Thank you very much. Open forum. Item number 4 on our agenda. I believe, Miranda, there's no open forum presentation this evening.
Mr. Mayor, there are no open forum presentations for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will proceed then on to item number 6, which is public hearing for bylaw 1006-21 Dansereau Meadows Redistricting. Public hearing, 2nd and 3rd reading this evening. Who from administration will speak to the public hearing, please?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. First off, I would just like to introduce the applicant, Elise Shillington with Stantec, and Alex Seepley from Anthem United, who are joining us this evening for this public hearing. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council and the public, I can deal with the preliminary matters and confirm that item 6A, bylaw 1006-21, Dansereau Meadows Redistricting. The purpose of this bylaw is to amend bylaw 944-19, Beaumont Land Use Bylaw, to redistrict a portion of the Dansereau Meadows neighborhood. That notice of the public hearing for bylaw 1006-21 was given in writing to the assessed landowner, the adjacent landowners, the applicant, Leduc County, and school boards and other agencies. I can confirm that the public hearing notice for bylaw 1006-21 was advertised in the local newspaper on January 7th and 14th, 2022. That the public hearing notice for bylaw 1006-21 was advertised on Beaumont's website beginning January 7th, 2022. And finally, I can confirm that administration has received no written submissions after the publication of this agenda package, so I have nothing to read into the record.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So the order for public hearing is the director of planning or designate, and then the applicant, those who favor the bylaw, those opposed to the bylaw, and then anybody deemed to be heard about the bylaw. So having said that, the director of planning, do we have a designate from administration, please, to speak to this? That be Mick Sangster, I'm assuming?
That's correct.
Please proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. As noted, I'm Emily Sangster. I'm a long-range planner with the city. And as stated previously, this public hearing is for the proposed bylaw 1006-21 for a redistricting in the Dansereau Meadows neighborhood. So I'll just begin by providing a brief overview of the application, and I'll then be happy to respond to questions that you might have.
Ms. Sangster, would you mind? I missed a spot. I don't believe I just officially declared the public hearing open. So if I missed that step, I will just did that now. So Ms. Sangster, please continue. Thank you.
Terrific.
Apologize. For
Thank
my
you, Your
error.
Worship. Okay. So the subject lands for this proposal are in the Dansereau Meadows neighborhood along a planned segment of Dansereau Way. And so the applicant proposes to amend the land use district map by redistricting 0.68 hectares of land from conventional neighborhood or CN district to integrated neighborhood or IN district as shown in attachment 1 in the council package. The unsubdivided area of Dansereau Meadows was previously districted to conventional neighborhood when the city adopted the current land use bylaw 944-19. And this was to be broadly consistent with the approved Dansereau Meadows outline plan land use concept in attachment 2. The intention of the conventional neighborhood district is to provide opportunities for lower density forms of residential development, similar to what currently exists in Beaumont. Notably for this application, the outline plan provides for street-oriented townhomes along a segment of Dansereau Way. And when Bylaw 944-19 was adopted, a portion of this segment had recently been redistricted accordingly under the previous land use bylaw, and the associated subdivision had already been approved. Because the townhomes require lots that are narrower than the minimum lot size in the conventional neighborhood district, the integrated neighborhood district was then applied to this subdivided portion when land use bylaw 944-19 was adopted. The intention of the integrated neighborhood district is to provide a variety of housing options with integrated local commercial and business opportunities, primarily in greenfield areas. The applicant now wishes to subdivide land to develop the remaining townhomes that are identified along Dansereau Way in the outline plan, but that were not included in the previous redistricting and subdivision that was mentioned previously. So a redistricting from conventional neighborhood district to integrated neighborhood district is needed before the subdivision can take place to reflect the narrower lot widths of these townhomes and to be consistent with the district that is already in place for comparable townhome lots along the same street. As noted, this redistricting proposal has been circulated to nearby landowners and relevant technical agencies through our usual circulation process, and no concerns have been raised. If approved, this proposal will permit the lands to be developed in accordance with the approved Dansereau Meadows outline plan, council strategic plan, and the city's overall land use planning framework. And so administration supports the adoption of this amendment. With that, I'd be pleased to answer any questions that you might have before we continue with the public hearing.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council for our presenter from administration? Councillor Tessier, you see your hand is up. You have the floor. Renee.
Hi, Ms. Sangster. Thanks so much for the presentation. The two cul-de-sacs that back the proposed amendment, are those completed yet, or have they started construction on those particular cul-de-sacs?
These are ones to the north. I should pull up the map actually.
Yeah, that's right.
Let me just take a quick look here.
No worries. It's tough with the zoom back and forth on the screen.
Oh yes, I see. To the north. No, those have not been completed yet.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Tessier. Are there any further questions from council for administration? Oh, Councillor McCook, I see your hand is up. Catherine, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mayor Daneluik, and thank you, Ms. Sangster. My question is, the buildings next to it, how many stories are they? Are they just regular townhomes?
The existing townhomes?
Yeah.
I'm not certain of that. It's something that the applicant may in fact have a better idea of once they make their presentation. I believe they are 2 to 3 stories, but they would be able to confirm that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any further questions from council for administration so far in the public hearing? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move to the applicant presentation portion of the public hearing. Who wishes to speak first from our applicants, please?
I will.
Thank you, Ms. Shillington. Please proceed.
Yeah. And I'll just share my screen here.
Can you introduce yourself and your company, please, if you could?
Yeah, you bet. My name is Elise Shillington. I'm a professional planner with Stantec Consulting in favor of the application. Can my screen be seen or
Not yet.
not yet? Okay.
It seems to be coming on now.
Okay,
Yes, we can see your screen.
perfect. So good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight at the public hearing. As I mentioned, my name is Elise Shillington. I'm a professional planner with Stantec Consulting. I'm joined by my client, Alex Steepley from Anthem United to answer questions only. Before you this evening is a proposed redistricting from conventional district to integrated neighborhood district. This will facilitate, there we go. This will facilitate the development of street-oriented lane townhomes in alignment with the approved outline plan designation of medium density. This slide generally illustrates the general location of the redistricting within the Dansereau neighborhood. Within the Dansereau Meadows outline plan, this area is designated as medium density residential. The integrated neighborhood district facilitates this type of development and is in alignment with the plan, and also is in alignment with what we've seen to date in terms of development on this block just to the west. So the integrated neighborhood district has also been utilized here for street-oriented townhomes. We're looking to do the same product mix along this block. And with that brief presentation, we're happy to take any questions at this time. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Will there be a second presenter for the applicant, or are you just doing just yourself, Ms. Shillington?
Just myself, and Alex is here joining me for questions only.
Okay, no problem. I wasn't sure about that. So any questions from council, please, for the applicant in favor of the bylaw? Okay, I'm looking at my screen. Seeing none. Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Shillington, for your presentation. We appreciate
Thank you so much.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody of the public, Miranda, regarding wishes to speak in favor of the bylaw, who may register to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to members of council and the public, we have had no other registered speakers for this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on then, is there anybody who may register to speak in opposition to the bylaw virtually this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have had no registrations to speak in opposition this evening.
Okay, and I guess with Zoom, it's difficult to sort of ask a blanket question on anybody who deems himself to be affected by the bylaw, which is to be heard. I'm assuming, has anybody applied who deems himself to be affected to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council and the public, I have had no one come forward that has deemed themselves affected.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So with that, I believe that concludes the public hearing. Councillor Tessier, you have your hand up. Would you wish to speak?
Sorry, quick question. Just confirming. So are these townhouses a laneway behind? And was it always a laneway?
Ms. Shillington, are you able to answer that question?
I am, yes. So these are laned product, and the outline plan has always contemplated these with a lane.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Tessier, for your question. Seeing no further questions from council wishing to speak and no further parts of our public hearing to be conducted, I'll declare the public hearing now closed. Thank you, council, and listening audience at home. We'll then proceed on to, is there a motion from council to proceed with second reading of the bylaw 100-21, Dansereau Meadows Redistricting? Member of council wishing to make that motion? Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd be pleased to make the motion that bylaw 1006-21, Dansereau Meadows Redistricting, a bylaw to amend bylaw 944-19, our zoning blueprint land use bylaw, be given second reading.
Thank you, councillor. Discussion on the motion, please. Does council wish to have any questions or discuss the second reading of the proposed bylaw? Councillor Barnhart, your hand is still up. You wish to speak? I'm assuming you wish to speak, or that's just making the motion?
That's right.
Okay, just the motion. Thank you. Any member of council wishing to ask a question at this point? All right, seeing none, I will call for the vote on second reading. Please indicate your vote accordingly. And that motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Before we move to third reading, we need to get consent on third reading. Is there consent from council to move to third reading? Would you please, could you please enroll with the votes? Thank you. Would you please provide your consent by raising your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pardon me for interrupting, but you don't require consent to move into third. We can go straight to a motion for third reading this evening.
Okay, thank you.
Because we're only doing the 2 readings this evening, not all 3 at once.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that little detail. Thank you. We
Thank
try to
you.
avoid all 3 the same night. Forgot about that. So thank you, council. We have a procedural change, and that simply is there a motion to move to third reading of the bylaw? And Councillor Miller, are you prepared to make that motion, please?
I am. Thank you. I move that bylaw 1006-21 Dansereau Meadow redistricting be given third reading.
Thank you, Councillor. Any discussion on the motion, please, from council? See no hands going up. I will ask you to vote for third reading with your voting buttons, please. That motion also carries unanimously. Thank you to our presenters externally, and thank you, Ms. Sangster, internal presenter on this bylaw. Thank you for your time and helping us out this evening with your presence. Thank you very much. With that, we move on to business item 7A. And I see we have our presenter joining us online, Mr. Carnegie. 7A is the Recreation, Parks and Culture Advisory Committee report to council. And is Mr. Carnegie, are you prepared to present?
Yes, I am.
Thank you for coming, Martin. Do appreciate that. So whenever you're ready.
Yeah, no problem. Just gotta get my screen shared.
Thank you.
All right. You guys see the screen? Oops. Okay, well, thank you very much for having me here. We're part of this committee. We had quite a few meetings that unfortunately not as many as we wanted to due to COVID, but it was really good meetings that we had with our group. And I'm glad to be part of it and glad to have the team that we had there. So we were established in 2019 with just basically the purpose of getting the groups to come to us to talk about, any requirements they had or anything they'd like to see, and kind of bring that information forward to council as kind of a consolidated list for everybody. We reviewed all kinds of plans for tennis courts. What else do we look at? The recreation facilities, the pickleball, lighting for the tennis courts, trails, outdoor facilities for workout facilities, a lot of different things that we had worked on through this season. Also fees, they would come to us, talk to us about fees, which was great to see what's going on there. So there was a few of us on the board, Dolores, Grant, myself, Russ, and Vive, and then we also had some of the councillors, Councillor Bill at the time, and Stephen and Paul Suter there was also help us out. The idea was to meet 10 times a year, and we got 7 times last year, which I think was pretty good considering all the stuff that happened with COVID. And for the upcoming year, we do have some new people on board. I definitely like to thank those that were on the board previously. Russ especially did a great job chairing the board, and I'd like to thank him for his service there. He was really instrumental to moving us forward. So thank you, Russ, if you're seeing this. So some of the topics, the Bellevue skating rink, there was a lot of different options floating around for what to do with that. It needed some maintenance, lots of maintenance. Plus it also needed some changes to it for orientation due to pucks hitting the houses nearby. So there's a lot of great discussion around that. The outdoor exercise equipment. So the idea is to get some outdoor facilities for people to work out. Maybe they're going on their jogs around town and can pop by these exercise machines. It's a science culture presentation. So we had a presentation, just basically like a STEM presentation that was brought forward to us. The multi-use field, so the new field at the high school. which if anybody's got a chance to look at or hasn't had a look at, go look at it. It's great. Good job, guys. And then one of the other ones is disc golf. So because of the fields at our new field at the high school kind of messed up the disc golf. So we're working hard to try to figure out how to get that back into place, whether it's in the same location or a new location. Okay. So some of the things that we had done is working on relations with Leduc County. So trying to look at shared facilities between Beaumont and Leduc County. So there's a facility there, or some type of facility we're looking at out by, I think it's Royal Oaks, I think it was, out west of that. It's actually really neat. But we created the arts and culture position as part of this group. The idea was it kind of sort of started off as more on a recreation, but the idea was to also have a representation from the culture. So we wanted to make sure that that is in this group too, because it's a finite set of money coming out, and we need to make sure we're optimizing it for everybody as much as possible. Let's see, there was new outdoor rinks were created, which has been great. And let's see, oh, the inflatable for the pool. If anybody has seen that, that's really cool looking. I haven't tried it yet because I'd probably kill myself. And yeah, oh, the West Recreation Facility. So it has the baseball diamonds, but should also add in there, it's also got the dog park in there too. Very, very important. Looking forward to that opening up for my dog. And we also had some different volunteer organizations come out and present. So Champs Valley School, they are looking to try to get an outdoor rink in the southwest side of Beaumont. And some presentations proving Four Seasons Park. Pickleball was out for trying to get more facilities for themselves, which is great because it's a very growing sport, and it'd be great to get more people out doing it. And update on the Heritage House, and then also obviously the Bellevue Rink. We have more discussions on that. And that is it. Doesn't sound like we did a lot, but we did.
Thank you, Martin. Much appreciated. Thank you for your service on that committee. I know I enjoyed my time on that committee as a member over the last couple of years. So I think it's a very active committee. Lots of topics, lots of discussion, lots of very spirited discussion too on recreation needs and where to plot things going forward and what to recommend to council to consider for future capital budgets. So I do appreciate your work on that, Martin, very much. Any questions from council for our presenter on the, pardon me, the Parks and Culture Recreation Advisory Council? Seeing no questions at this time?
Yeah.
Sometimes silence can be golden, Martin. So you hit all the high points. Much appreciated. And again, thanks for your service. I look forward to seeing you guys again from the committee in front of us a year from now, and we can hopefully have more things to talk about in the coming months regarding recreation, sports, and culture here in Beaumont. So Martin, thank you for your time. I do appreciate you coming out this evening to present to us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you, Martin. The next item of business is 7B, Councillor Tessier's motion. So Councillor Tessier, when your motion is on the screen, I'll ask you to move your motion and then speak to it after you make the motion, please. And then we'll open up the council for questions. You're on mute, Rennie. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that by the end of the second quarter of 2022, administration prepare a report on the land use bylaw, specifically on the feasibility and impacts of adding additional parking restrictions for business uses and additional dwelling units in current residential zones, the feasibility and impact of limiting the number of dwelling units per parcel to a maximum of 2 suites for single family homes where no detached garage is included, and a maximum of 3 suites for single family homes where a detached garage is included. And an overview of the current standards for home-based businesses, minor and major, including the types of businesses typically in each category. So obviously the land use bylaw is a major reflection of us on council and what we believe the city of Beaumont should look like in regards to housing and how our neighborhoods are constructed. I believe a revamp of the land use bylaw was in order, which happened in 2019. And we need to tweak this land use bylaw to ensure life does stay better in Beaumont. I've been contacted with numerous complaints about issues during the campaign and now as a city councillor. There are two parts of this land use bylaw that we need to be looking at from our view: how it affects builders and how it affects our residents. Obviously, our residents come first when it comes to anything, and some of these builders actually live in our city as well. I think right now the bylaw has favored certain builders, smaller builders, and not the major players. This bylaw has been taken advantage of from small builders that come in and then leave our city, which leaves our residents with the issues and now upset with us. For the changes, I'll just talk about each of those ones I do mention. So the first one, the feasibility and impacts of adding additional parking restrictions for business uses and additional dwelling units in the current residential zone. So parking restrictions is something that does need to be looked at. With more residential homes in a smaller area, we see a lot more vehicles now in areas of our residents because we got to meet those density targets, right? So we need to ensure when a business is opened within a home, the street neighbors are okay with the increased number of vehicle traffic, if there are any, if it's a major or a minor development. And B, is there a place for the customers to park if there's going to be customers coming in and out? The second thing, the feasibility and impact of limiting the number of dwelling units per parcel to a maximum of 2 suites for single family homes where no detached garage is included, and a maximum of 3 suites for single family homes where a detached garage is included. So right now in the bylaw, in a single family home, you can put up to 4 suites in one house. That seems a little bit excessive to me, as to me, that's called a townhouse. So I really think limiting to a maximum of 2 suites for a single family home with attached garages and 3 suites for the single family homes with detached garages is quite adequate and in line with what our residents want in their neighborhoods. An overview of the current standards for home-based businesses, so minor and major, including the types of businesses typically in each category. So right now we have 2 categories, which are minor and major. From my understanding, a minor business is something like a telemarketer where there's only 1 employee and no customers. And a major is anything like a nail salon, hair salon, or accounting firm with an employee or 2 or more type of thing. I really think we need to look into having a minor, medium, and major where each is defined a little bit more clearly. As of now, you can put a convenience store out of your home, which, from who I've asked, would upset most residents. It's not something we're used to. And we need to ensure we're looking out for our residents by making sure this bylaw is clearly defined and there are opportunities for our residents to have input. And especially when a bigger business were to come into your neighborhood. I really want to thank administration for their assistance to get this notice of motion to where it is, and look forward to the discussion with everyone. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tessier. I do appreciate your comments. At this time, I'll open up to questions from council. Mr. Tessier and his motion in front of us here now, please. Councilor McCough-Swain, you're the first hand up. So Sam, you have the floor, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question, Renee, around the process of this. Obviously, you're well aware that admin does come back and provide an update to council on the land use bylaw, and they share that information with us. Or and you've seen one of those already. I'm just curious on why we need this motion here to be specific on these 3 items and not part of that broader feedback loop that we get from administration. Could you just speak to that?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Mostly is, again, those reports come back and kind of tell us what's going on with the land use bylaw. And to me, these were the 3 things that I got the most concerns with from residents and things that I was really passionate about. I'm not against, obviously, changing the report in other areas, but these were the 3 specific things that I wanted to make sure administration dove into and made sure they came back with something in regards to these 3 things. but not just on these three, but the whole land use bylaw, I guess. But I just really wanted to make sure those three things were in there and that was communicated.
Okay, thank you. And maybe a couple of follow-up questions for administration, Your Worship, Mr.
Yes,
Mayor.
please proceed. This is actually substantial. So go ahead and Sam, ask 1 or 2 or 3 questions, and each councillor, if you have more than one question, just let me know what you do, and please proceed, okay? Go ahead, Sam.
Thank you. And I see Ms. Raymond jumping on. So I guess the first question, so personally, I haven't heard these, and I'm not saying that there aren't these concerns. They just haven't reached me. So I'm just curious if administration has heard any concerns from other residents or builders or anyone impacted on these 3 points. Is this something that's come up from administration?
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Munkoff-Swain. So in regards to these different items in here, we have heard, I guess, a few different things regarding the number of dwelling units on a parcel, and just a little bit more questions regarding them and wanting some more information. We haven't had as much of this negative feedback. We don't have any. We've checked with municipal enforcement to see what kind of complaints have come in regarding these. We haven't been receiving them. We've had secondary suites within Beaumont since about 2013 in some form or another, and have been progressively allowing for them more and more over time. And to date, we just haven't received those type of complaints associated with these, but we would do public engagement on that to understand more.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to get a sense from administration. Obviously, just because you haven't heard it doesn't mean that there haven't been those concerns. Clearly, obviously, Councillor Tessier is bringing those forward. I'm not challenging that. I just wanted to get a sense if you'd heard those. And then the last question for me, and this is whenever we get notice of motion that come up, I'm trying to be cognizant of the workload. So I'm just curious. Second quarter 2022, I think the timeframe obviously seems okay, but just curious if administration could share their thoughts on how much work. It might be hard to quantify, but the amount of work involved in doing and if we executed this motion.
Thank you again, through your worship, to Councillor Munkoff-Swain. If council were to approve this notice of motion tonight, administration would be coming back with a budget amendment. This would need to go to an external consultant for help to be able to deliver this. We don't have any administrative capacity to handle this inquiry and the scope of this inquiry at this time.
And just to follow up on that one, is that based on the timeline, or is that just based on
the scope? On the scope of the notice of motion itself, yes. Right now, with the volume of permits and responding to our day-to-day stuff and dealing with budget and all the projects that we have ongoing for 2022, either it would need to take a budget adjustment to go for external services, or we would need to be looking at reprioritizing what we have on our workload.
Thank you. I'll leave it there, Your Worship.
But to 2022, that scope timeframe, if we had an external consultant, it could be done by the end of that.
Yeah, no, I recognize that. Thank you. I'll leave it there, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Munkoff-Swain. So before I go to Councillor Barnhart, then Councillor Daneluik. So Ms. Raymond, when you mentioned an external consultant, that would of course would involve a cost that's not part of our current budget allocation for the department, correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
Yeah, not asking for an amount, just to correct, it'd be an additional cost. Thank you. Councillor Barnhart, you have the floor, Kathy, and then followed by Councillor Daneluik.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councillor Tessier, for bringing this forward. I totally understand where it's coming from. Question for the administration. In the past, when we've had councillors raise concern or residents raise concern about the land use bylaw, I recall being given information from the administration that you can't open just a piece of the land use bylaw. Once you open it for review, essentially everything is on the table, and it could turn out to be quite extensive. First of all, am I correct in that? Like, you can't limit, if someone wants to speak about a bylaw, they can speak to any part of that bylaw. Can you maybe help me understand if that's still the case?
Yes, so through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, when we would be looking at any bylaw amendments, they could have other repercussions for other aspects of the land use bylaw that we would also need to consider as well. When that came through for somebody to be able to speak to this, obviously the bylaw amendment that we would be passing would be very specific, right? So if council did decide to go forward with this notice of motion, and then following that notice of motion, they directed council administration to prepare amendments. When we prepared amendments, they would still be only speaking to that bylaw and what was in there. I mean, people could talk about their other issues with the land use bylaw, but council wouldn't be considering that proposal on the table at that time. Does that help?
It does. I think the concern that I'm reflecting on is that there was a lot of time and effort put into this land use bylaw and a lot of consultation. And like you said, when you make changes to one part, you're changing something else. We knew as a council we were embarking on some significant differences in terms of the way we went down this road, and that there would be some pain, some growing pains in going through this. And I guess my concern with opening it up again, and especially in some of the areas, the secondary suites and the home-based businesses too in particular, I'm just concerned about how that might have repercussions for developers, for innovation, for investment, all of those things that we're trying really hard to work on. And in addition to some of the things that Councillor Munkoff-Swain raised, I am concerned about opening it up and starting all over again. And I know that's not the intention of Councillor Tessier at all, but I just wonder if there's some, is there a way to look at parts of it without opening the whole bylaw? Maybe that's the better question.
Yeah, so through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, absolutely. I think that there has been a lot of work that has gone into this bylaw. And as we talked about, it's a change. It's a departure from the usual way of doing business, right? And it's kind of a mind shift. And to be able to think bold and to move to what we want the community to look like into the future and how we need to grow, it required a shift from the usual way of doing business. If we want to be more innovative and be easier to do business with and be more flexible and have that ability to respond to the market as it comes and provide a little bit more certainty, that requires a bit more of a flexible land use bylaw, which is very nimble. But one of the key tenets of this land use bylaw was our monitoring program, but also just our focus on evergreening the bylaw and providing timely amendments to the bylaw, so that if something wasn't working or there was something that needed amendment, we would be able to do that. And then it's not a whole-scale overhaul of the bylaw. We can amend certain things and be able to tweak that, but we would need to look at the bylaw comprehensively. And this notice of motion would have engagement that would be done with it, with both the community at large and the development and the business community as well, because they would be most affected by these changes. And that would be part of that report that we would come back to council with. But there's certainly the ability to do pieces and to change pieces without having to do a total overhaul and throw the bylaw out. Yep.
So that's different than it was in the past. And I did hear you say, and I'm just underlining it, that there would be a wider engagement process. This wouldn't be based just on what council has heard. This would be based on other ways of determining who's affected and how many people are affected, and what the benefits or the pros and cons would be of those changes. We would get that in a report by the end of the second quarter, but it would cost us money. That's what you're saying.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnhart. Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, Stephen, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. A few questions, I guess. We'll start with the first one. How much money? What are we thinking? Are we thinking 5,000, 20,000, 50,000? What kind of a scale of budget amendment would be brought forward if this notice of motion passed? Thank you.
Yes. Through your worship to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, we are anticipating somewhere in the realm of $20,000 to $30,000.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Barnhart was just talking about the additional engagement that would be required. So that additional engagement would happen through the external consultant. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and the breadth of that engagement, would that require talking to residents, builders, developers, business owners? Is that the breadth of this engagement? And would that be the intent, to make sure that we're talking to everybody to consider all inputs?
Yes, we would be preparing a stakeholder list, looking at who needed to be consulted and engaged on this issue. And that would include those types of people that you had just mentioned, as well as the community at large, because this would also affect that as well. So what does the broader community want?
Yeah, thank you. And you were talking about timely amendments and evergreening, and we've heard a land use bylaw update. And when would the next one be scheduled?
Through your worship to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, the next one is not scheduled yet. We're currently working through our list of intended amendments that I would have to get that date and get back to you as to when we were planning on bringing that back.
Yeah, it hasn't jumped up on the the future planning, so it's likely months away, I would say. Is that fair to say?
It's probably a few months away, yes.
Yeah, you betcha. And then if this notice of motion did lead to any kind of changes to the bylaw, how would those changes affect, or would there be grandfathering? How could those changes affect what's already underway in Beaumont?
So through your worship to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, when you have a development permit application that is already in play at the city, so you've submitted your application, you have a choice to be able to go underneath the new land use bylaw regulations or the old ones, whichever ones were in play at the time you made the application. And anybody else beyond that would be subject to the new one. So if you had an existing home-based business that was permitted and conforming, then that would be permitted to continue as a non-conform. It would really depend, right, on that scope, but it could continue maybe as a non-conforming use for as long as you live there and as long as that business continued to operate it. And there's a variety of different things that go into a non-conforming use, but it would really depend on what that scope of that amendment really was. But there are definitely options.
Yeah, and that's a very forward-looking question, I do know. And then last question, just back to the financial aspect of things. Would this require a change to the tax levy that's already been communicated out to residents?
Through your worship to Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, it doesn't have to come off the tax levy. I want to remind council that there is a planning reserve that is set aside to be able to deal with items like this, but also to deal with improvements to the planning and development business line. And there is money in there to be able to draw from that.
Thank you for answering my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCook, your hand is up. Catherine, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Daneluik. Just a couple questions to clarify. I understand why Renee brought this forward. I can see some of the concerns. I also understand that, to Sam and Kathy's point as well, that the new land use bylaw definitely took some forward thinking and stuff, and sometimes it's just changing how we look at things. During the public engagement, just because Councillor Tessier and Miller and I weren't part of the changes to this bylaw, was any of this stuff considered or talked about, that information that we can maybe go back to and kind of pull from to maybe clarify some of this stuff, or maybe some of these things were considered?
Through your worship to Councillor McCook, we definitely talked about the number of dwelling units that could take place on a parcel and how that would be impacted. We've been talking about parking through various different things, and it'd probably been more general communications that had gone out on that, but we also did do work with the chamber when we were looking at the business regulations and the business community as well. So the home-based business we used to have a live work, it wasn't well utilized, and we kind of took this and had tried to figure out how to make kind of having that home-based business a little bit easier for people so that they could scale up in grow their business in Beaumont, to deal with our business retention and expansion wishes. But we definitely did do some of that. I wouldn't say that that was as much targeted on that, because we didn't do a lot of changes to the home-based business. Those regulations were already in place underneath our old land use bylaw, but the dwelling units one was a change, and we definitely did go out on numerous occasions to people on that, but not specifically on that one issue, but more on the land use bylaw as a whole. But we could provide some information back on that. There are what we heard reports that we could draw on that were provided to council. They're part of some past agenda packages, and we can draw those up for you.
Okay, yeah. I don't know. I don't want to add additional work, but I'm just wondering if there's already information that you know, council went through and considered when making some of these decisions that might be helpful for us to look at, to consider. And then some of the business part, would some of those considerations almost kind of tie into or be part of the business licensing bylaw that we're kind of going through right now? Considering like major, minor, medium businesses, would that tie in at all or no?
Through your worship to Councillor McCook, I think right now the definition for, say, a home-based business that's minor is an office and a telephone. So you know, what this notice of motion is kind of getting at is looking at what's all considered within each category, if I can speak for Councillor Tessier, in terms of like what actually constitutes a minor home-based business and a major, and that's that type of businesses that are in there. But what standards are we using to consider that usage when we're looking at those and approving those development permits? So I'm not quite sure that that would go into the business license. It could kind of confuse things, although they are linked, but I think they're better separate.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Munkoff-Swain, I see your hands up, but I'm going to have a couple of questions to finish off round one, and you'll begin round two if you're okay with that. Thank you very much. A quick question for Councillor Tessier, if I may, and then I got a couple observations myself. So Councillor Tessier, in one of your comments, you mentioned that the current bylaw may seem to favor the smaller builders as opposed to the larger major builders. Could you expand on that comment before I have a rebuttal to that, if I could, please?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Mayor. From what I've talked to other builders, they see these random builders come in, they look at the land use bylaw and try to build it to what, you know, as many suites as they can, the biggest house that they can, and they're not thinking of any of the residents that live near them, and then they're gone, right? We're not talking about a Royer home or a Homes by Avi or Pace Setter. We're talking about random builders that come in, take advantage of, you know, loopholes, let's call it, and then leave the residents hang out to dry type of thing. So, you know, obviously Royer Homes isn't one, but AR Homes, talking to those individuals and Fouquet Homes and the ones that are looking to start building more and more in Beaumont, a lot of this has come from those areas and the builders themselves. So.
Thank you for clarifying your thoughts on that. Ms. Raymond, you want to comment on that, please? Go right ahead.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Tessier, just to tie back on that one comment, we did do focus groups and workshops with the builders themselves. AR Homes was present at those workshops and did provide a lot of feedback on the applicability and the usability of the bylaw themselves, and anything that they would be doing would meet the market, right? So people are going to build what the market will buy and what the market will bear. So, you know, even if we change the land use bylaw, that still might not, you know, impact the types of multi-generational people that are living in houses or that desire for that type of housing product.
Yeah, totally. That's a great answer. And just so we're clear too, like the multi-generational homes, that's great too. Great to have in Beaumont. We want to diversify our houses, but the one thing that I'm really, you know, sticking by is the 4 suites in a house is not usually a multi-generational home. It's 4 different families living in one house, like a townhome, right? The multi-generational homes usually, they do have a kitchen downstairs, but it's not considered an extra dwelling suite type of thing. That's the route I'm going for, that is all. But yeah, seriously appreciate the feedback on that, Kendra. So thank you.
Just to clarify, you can have 2 parcels in a house, so only 2 suites, so 1 principal dwelling unit, 1 secondary dwelling unit, and then you could have a garage suite and you can have a nanny suite or something else in the yard. So it's not 4 suites in a house.
Okay, thank you.
That's the current rules, Ms. Raymond, that's the current rules? Yes, thank you very much. I have a couple of comments for this motion before I go to the second round. I do know, being part of the previous process, administration and council spent a lot of time on the current bylaw, build non-use bylaw. It's a lot of work. It's been a great document. It was heavily consulted with the public in terms of builders, residents, all interested parties. I understand there's a feeling now that it seems, going back to the presentation before Christmas, when we had some local residents come and talk about this particular issue. When I saw the home they're talking about, the house from the front looks like a normal house. You can't tell there's more than one unit inside the house. So I don't know where this is sort of coming from, in the sense that it is compliant with the current bylaw, but it just seems to be restricted to the concerns of a few residents in a very small part of Beaumont, the way it seems to me, Councillor Tessier. There are, as you know, numerous neighborhoods are all around Beaumont who have different types of dwellings in them. This is not an issue that seems to be rampant across the entire city. It seems to be rather, have to be blunt, a little, quite frankly, very localized and very specific to perhaps 1 or 2 streets. So I'm a little concerned about the focus of such a small and vocal number of residents to influence an entire land use bylaw for the entire city. That's my kind of concern right now, but I'll yield the floor to my fellow councillors. We'll go into round 2 of questions. We'll start with Councillor Munkhoff-Swain, followed by Councillor Van Nieuwkerk, followed by Councillor Barnhart. So Sam, you have the floor, please, for round 2 of questions.
Thank you. And I don't have any questions, more just hearing the discussion and more just kind of put my position out there so folks know which way I'm going. So I guess I was conflicted coming into this, clearly concerned around the level of impact and time for administration, and the fact that we went through a significant amount of engagement to get here. But when I went back and thought through that process and checked my notes and all that sort of thing, a lot of these ideas that were put into this one were very innovative, and acknowledge the planning group for bringing those forward. And whenever you're doing something like that, the concern is, do you go too far? Do you overreach? And when I went back and looked at it, one of the key things that I wrote down was the update reports that are coming in, and really that I bolded it here in my notes where it just says, we can always change it if it doesn't work. And so while I haven't personally heard these, what I don't want to, these concerns, what I don't want to do is just put my blinders on and just assume that this bylaw is perfect. And so I will be voting in favor of this motion. We'll get to the, I'm curious on the process around the costs. I think we could all agree that we would prefer this to come out of our reserve, but ultimately, I think when we're looking at these innovative things, sometimes, with these dwelling, you don't really know until you actually get out there and see it built up. And while I'd love for engagement to come at that high level planning overview, sometimes you just need to look and see and touch exactly what's out in front of you. So clearly this is an issue. So I'll be voting in favor of this. And I'm interested in seeing what the report comes back with. And I'll reserve my vote on any specific changes for down the road when the report comes back. So I'll leave it there, Your Worship, and thanks, Councillor Tessier, for explaining the concerns here and walking through this. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Councillor Newkirk, Stephen, you have the floor for your questions and or comments.
Yeah, thank you. I guess a few comments is I have heard the feedback. So we had a group in front of us talking to us in council, and we did get that feedback. And I have had feedback from 2 other spots in Beaumont, specifically around the parking seems to be the issue that pops up more often than not. So if our garages weren't so darn handy for storage and gyms, maybe we'd park in them and then there'd be less vehicles all over the streets. Sometimes I wonder, when we build these big houses and, there's 6 or 7 potential parking spots for these homes, and then everybody's parking on the street, because the kids want to play on the driveway and the garage is a good gym, right? Those are the kinds of decisions decisions that council has no privy over, and that's, you know, homeowners have those decisions, and I think the consequences of some of those decisions lead us to parts of this conversation tonight. So when I think about the suites and the maximum number of suites, that's one of those situations where we don't know what we don't know until we start doing it and getting feedback. So, you know, I value that feedback that we get. I'm not certain that I've heard much around the third point about, you know, home-based businesses, major and minor. I have heard about some parking concerns with some home-based businesses, and have seen firsthand some businesses being operated out of garages, like, you know, full of you know, industrial equipment and all these kinds of things, and, you know, vehicles all over the street, and you know, coming in the middle of the night and whatnot. So I can definitely understand, you know, where some of this feedback comes from. Historically, I've been pretty consistent with hearing more about issues, and I think that's where I'm at with this one. Definitely similar to Councillor Monkoff-Swain, not going to tip my hand on whether I support any changes to this or not, but I think some additional information would not hurt, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Miller. Kathy, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mayor. And you know, lots of thought going into the questions and the answers that we're sharing. And I too have kind of been on the fence on this one. And it is a report, so more information is definitely valuable. I want to go back to the administration though and ask, if I'm not mistaken, at the monitoring report is going to be coming back addressing some issues that the administration identified. Could these not be added to that monitoring report? And perhaps it may not cost $30,000. Perhaps that's already built into your work plan. Not trying to nickel and dime here, but I guess I'm resisting a little bit that the administration did expect there would be some changes. So now to kind of put us in a bind of having to spend more money to get some of the changes we've heard from residents doesn't seem quite fair. So Ms. Raymond, I put you on the spot here, but can we do this without it being a matter of dollars and cents for council?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, right now with the workload that we are currently undertaking at this point, we are very busy with our normal day-to-day activities, as well as, I think, rolling out PLL and numerous high-profile items that council would like to be able to offer better services to people. We do not have the staff capacity to be able to do this report justice. I think this report and the public engagement that it will take to actually, you know, get that feedback that we're looking for requires some external resourcing to be able to support us on this matter. You know, the in-house, the monitoring report is done in-house, but it is using existing metrics that we already have. We don't have some of this metrics. We're going to have to create it. We're going to have to do further research and understand more of this issue. But the public engagement to do that right is going to be time intensive. And that is where we really just don't have the time. And I don't have a scope in front of me. I don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. But to be able to do this report and get the feedback that you're looking for, it is going to take some external resourcing. We just can't handle it in-house.
Fair, and I appreciate your honest response there. Last question, and then I think that'll do it for me. The current residents that are unhappy with the building of the multiple suites, is that issue resolved? Or is this going to open that up to be unresolved?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, can you just elaborate on what you're asking?
As other councillors have certainly, as other councillors have mentioned, we've heard directly from residents that they're not happy with some of these bylaw changes and what has happened in their neighborhood. Mm-hmm. Does this open that up again? Or are those issues resolved?
Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart, this would be examining some of those issues that they've been talking about in terms of how many dwelling units can be allowed and what those parking requirements are and those sorts of things. Those would address that.
Would that have an impact on the building that is there? And would
Not on the
there
building
be
that
some-
is currently already there. No, that would not, it might make it non-conforming at this point underneath the current bylaw, but then it would be, if they had permits, then it would be illegal, non-conforming and able to continue.
And could you explain what that means? Because I know what it means when someone is non-conforming, but could you please explain for the rest of the councillors? Because I know this came up in the past. What does that mean for the owner of that property?
Sure. So through to your worship to Councillor Barnhart. So to answer your question, when something is non-conforming, it means it doesn't meet the current regulations underneath the land use bylaw. So if we were to say driveways is a great example, we've gone back and forth over the length of driveways, and some driveways are 6 meters, some are 6.5 meters. But where it comes in is you have to meet the requirements and the regulations of the land use bylaw at the time your application is made. If we change it later, if council changes it later through bylaw, then they would be no longer conforming. Say like if we changed it to 6.5 meters and they only had a 6 meter driveway, then that driveway is now considered to be legal non-conforming. If you had, like side yards or something, or use of a property, sometimes we might change the use and we might remove the use, say, out of the land use district. That use can still happen. So say that we removed convenience stores out of the residential district and somebody had opened a convenience store. They could continue with that convenience store as long as they didn't discontinue the use for 6 months. They didn't make it bigger. They, didn't suffer catastrophic loss and have to rebuild. They could continue to operate that convenience store. And then that's what that means by it being non-conforming, because it wouldn't be allowed by somebody new coming into the neighborhood because it's not permitted by the bylaw anymore, but it was allowed for at the time that application was made and therefore can continue.
So then, Ms. Raymond, would the current builders current owners of that property be the next ones coming to council and saying, you're putting me in a situation now where I've done something according to your bylaw, and now you're changing the rules and putting me into a circumstance where I might not have the same investment over time?
They would still have the same investment over time. People have made that argument. It actually hasn't held up as something that, it doesn't affect their ability to, say, get a mortgage or to get insurance on their property. They're still able to do all of those different things. They can sell the property to somebody else and that development permit runs with the land, and that person could then still run the convenience store so that business can continue. We haven't actually affected that. We've just affected the ability of somebody else to open up a convenience store in that neighborhood. Or if they stop doing that business for 6 months, then they wouldn't be able to resume that unless they met the current bylaw.
Okay, thank you. I think I've exhausted my questions on that, and this is a report. I'll be voting in favor of the report coming back, but as my other councillor colleagues have said, I'm not sure where I'm going to land on the changes, if there are any. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miller, thank you for your patience. Ashley, you have the floor.
Thank you, your mayor, and Mr. Mayor, sorry. Thank you. And I want to thank Councillor Barnhart for actually asking that question, because I appreciate as a newbie learning about these, this language and this verbiage. So the non-conforming and piece of it has educated me a bit. I just have a question. I was going to initially, before I even heard from Councillor Barnhart, I was just going to say that I think that it's fair to, for myself, I'm in favor of this motion, and I think it's fair to hear, maybe at this point we haven't all received feedback from residents in a large capacity regarding this, these three issues, but I think it's a fair thing to at least get more information for them before it becomes potentially more and more residents or more and more housing being built, and then it does become a loud voice for all of us. So I think that's fair. I just had one question, I guess, regarding your analogy on a convenience store or a driveway, would this be comparable to, say, coding for a house? You have an electrical inspection and then you have codes that you build your house according to. And within years, the coding becomes out of date or invalid. Would that be sort of the same kind of analogy?
Through your worship to Councillor Miller. Yeah, similar in terms of if the code changes, it doesn't change the ability, like, the safety of your house in that way, right? Like, or your business. The code that is in place is the code that was in force at the time that you made your application. So unless you were to specifically go through and change your business or whatever you have, then you would need to meet the new codes at that time, right?
Okay, gotcha. Thanks so much. I won't continue speaking to this any further, but I will be in favor of this motion. So thank you, everybody, for all your comments, and that is all I have.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further hands up to speak, reading the tone of the room and the various previous comments, at this point, I will call for the question then. At this point, I'll ask you, councillors, to use your vote buttons accordingly on the motion in front of you, 7B. And that passed unanimously. Thank you very much. We look forward to the report. And as mentioned earlier, we may need to, reserve my judgment until the end of the report coming out regarding any major changes to land use bylaw. So thank you, Councillor Tessier, for bringing it forward. Council, thank you for the debate on this important motion, and we do appreciate carrying forward. Looking forward to the report to come back hopefully by the end of the second quarter. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is 7C, Mayor Daneluik motion following notice, name the city Snowplows contest. This should be, I think, a fairly easy discussion. We'll have to see when you guys see the motion on the screen. Oh, CEO Schwartz, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just on that previous item, what we will do is bring back a report for a budget amendment before we actually start the work. So that'll come back on the February 8th meeting.
Oh, thank you, CEO Schwartz. That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that for us. Much appreciated. Is my motion on the screen, please? Thank you. I move that by the end of this first quarter of 2022, administration provide a report on option and feasibility of implementing a name the city Snowplows contest for children, and that the report include general parameters for the contest, opportunities for partnered local schools and the Beaumont Public Library, appropriate timelines, and appropriate costs for such a contest. And I'll simply speak to this motion, council, that came to me from one of our local residents. Thought it was a great idea, and he thought it was a great idea, and I thought, you know what, it sounds interesting. Could be fun for our kids to do something in the schools and the library to have some fun with naming some of our city's equipment. It could start with snowplows. It could lead to other pieces of equipment, who knows, down the road, but it's very much an idea that's going to involve our youth, especially our youth, maybe our seniors too, maybe all of our population, who knows, who wants to get involved with this, but it's more of a generally kind of a feel-good kind of public relations type of contest. I think it's going to be great for our schools and library to get behind this if we decide to proceed based on the information coming back from administration should this motion pass. With that, I'll take any questions from councillors if they have any. Seeing none, okay. I will call for the question on the motion, please. If you'll use your voting buttons, council, please. And I'm waiting for one more. Thank you very much, councillor. That motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much, council, for your consideration of this motion. Next on our agenda, that concludes item 7, business items. Next on our agenda would be councillor inquiries or reports. Are there any inquiries from council for administration this evening? I'm seeing no hands go up for any questions or inquiries. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item number 9, our CAO update. Mr. Schwartz, please, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. And we've got a couple items here, but they're related, so it should be brief. I wanted to reiterate the messaging that we've been sending out to the public around the backlogs that we're dealing with on the service requests and the extraordinary weather, and like everybody else, we're dealing with staffing challenges. But admin did a lot of work today to make some adjustments, specifically around snow removal and to address the backlog of the service requests. We are looking at bringing in other contractors who have equipment and operators to bring in do certain tasks, mainly hauling trucks and a dozer to move snow as well. We've extended the working hours for all of our city crews. They've gone from 10-hour days to 12-hour days. We're diverting parks staff to help with prioritizing cleaning of hotspots. A lot of those were identified for the service request. We're going to send this out tomorrow anyway in detail. I just wanted to give you an overview. Tomorrow we've hired a contractor to start clearing out alleys. We recognize there's some significant ruts back there with this freeze thaw rain and just this weird weather we're having. We should be able to start attacking the backlog of service requests, at least being able to communicate to people. We're going to put extra staff on that as well. And we've also started cleaning up certain areas and putting up, sometimes we will end up getting into a cul-de-sac where we haven't been able to give the proper notice like we previously we'd like to put a sign up saying we're coming in Thursday. That may not occur. We get there and it's a hot spot. We're just going in to get it. One of the things I want to pass along to the members of the public is we have the service request tracker for a reason. That allows us obviously to track requests and to look at hotspots. It doesn't automatically mean that because you've entered that work request that request is going to be granted. Some of it is just not service that we do. However, we strive to make sure you understand that. What's happened now, because we're short of staff, is we've got almost 100 of those service requests in the queue that we haven't been able to get back to people. So we're trying to communicate that as much as we can. I did see the post that went out on priorities, and I just want to take a second. Council service level priorities are 1, 2, 3, and 4. What inevitably happens, and this year has been really bad for it, is we get all the 1s done, we get the 2s done, we start in on the 3s, and it snows. That means we stop, we won't go back to the 1s, the 2s, we get to the 3s. We didn't even get to the 4s until this week. So we do have crews that are focusing on the 4s right now. So I ask every member of public to be patient. Feel free to send us your hotspots if there's an area that we need to address, because the next thing that's going to come here is drainage issues. It's been a really weird year. So again, back to everybody, we're all in this together. So be patient. We will do a better job under these extraordinary circumstances and see if we can't all get through this, which I know we will. I also want to reiterate administration's condolences to the Harris family. Alan worked here for a number of years. I worked with him for a couple of years. They're still living here in Beaumont, and yes, he was out working for the city of Wetaskiwin and passed away suddenly last week. So we pass our condolences on to Belinda and the kids. Yeah, that was very shocking. Those are the updates I have. Well, one more today. We've been struggling with AHS getting numbers for Beaumont. Remember, the numbers as far as COVID is concerned are not accurate, but we are registering 244 cases in Beaumont today. 2 weeks ago, I told you we had 293. Those are PCR confirmed tests, so they don't include the rapid tests, but that's the same metric that's being used across our region. So we're going in the right direction, folks. Hang in there a little bit longer. I don't know how many times I've said that. Every pandemic in the history of the world has ended. I'm hearing the word endemic from AHS in the meetings that we're attending. So we're getting close. Let's not let our guard down. Thank you very much.
Thank you, CEO Schwartz. Appreciate that. Before I move on to the next part of our motion agenda, which was a motion, I just wanted to state, I was remiss in not stating earlier, my thanks to administration for putting together the slideshow for Councillors Hendricks and Stout and former Mayor John Stewart. That was a very nicely done little bit of history especially for Councillor Hendricks, going back a few years. Some of those pictures, there's some great pictures of John and Martin in those in that slideshow as well. So thank you for doing that. I do appreciate that on behalf of council and the public in general. So I should have said it earlier, but I forgot to. So I want to say now while I thought of it. Thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is number 10, notice of motion. Are there any councillors looking to make a notice of motion this evening? I have one myself coming up, but I will go to Councillor McCook first. Catherine, you have the floor, followed by Councillor Munkoff-Swain.
Thank you, Mayor Daneluik. I do have a notice of motion. Okay. I will move that by the end of the third quarter of 2022, administration prepare a report on snow removal, providing options for service level improvements, financial implications for each option, review of snow removal best practices, and alternative ways to communicate snow removal other than by snowpack. That will be for the February 8th.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. Councillor Monkoff-Swain, you have a notice of motion, and when it's presented there, please speak to it. Please state it. Sam, you have the floor.
Thank you. My notice of motion is as follows. I'll move, at February 8th, 2022 council meeting, I will move that by the May 17, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting, administration prepare a report with options for engaging council on their capital priorities prior to the presentation of the proposed capital budget.
Thank you, Councillor. Appreciate that. And seeing no further notice of motion from any other council member, I'll proceed with my own notice of motion, which is at the February 8th, 2022 council meeting, I will move that the mayor on behalf of council send a letter to Health Minister Copping and advocating for the addition of a second ambulance and a new walk-in medical center to the city of Beaumont, and that the mayor on behalf of council advocate for these priorities when meeting with members of legislative assembly. Thank you. Are there no further notice of motion before I go on to the next part of our agenda? Seeing none. Any council wish to make any statements of any kind before I go on to the next part of our agenda? Councillor Miller, you have the floor, Ashley.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am just wanting to put it out there to administration. Just thank you so much for your hard work this week, over the weekend. I know that it's crazy out there with the weather and the way that it's kind of been all coming together lately. And I really appreciate your prompt responses. Even speaking with yourself, Mike, on the phone after kind of putting my concern in via email, you were just exceptionally receptive to me. You explained everything to me, and it was, it really educated me. So I was able to pass that along to the residents. And I think that's just tenfold. That really closes the gap for them, being able to give them just that educational piece as to what's happening and why it's happening. And also the process of, P1 and P2 may get done, moving on to P3 and P4, but if there's a heavy snowfall, we're right back to P1 and P2 again. So that was just that piece really closed everything for me. And the resident reached out to me today, one of them, and was just exceptionally happy with that response. So I wanted to just thank you guys, everybody, for your hard work. I know it's been a kind of crazy few days. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much on behalf of administration. We certainly appreciate that. I'll pass that along to everybody.
Thank you, Councillor. And Mike, I'll echo Ashley's kudos, what she said in her comments. I won't be expanding more, but what she said, I think is endorsed by all of council, and I want to thank you for that as well too. I did a mayor's copy session last night, as some of you are aware. It started at 6:30, and by 6:45, I had 12 people sitting in front of me. It was actually almost a mini town hall. It was actually very good. They're all worried about snow removal, and when we sat down and had a good, honest discussion about how we do it, the priority 1, priority 2, 3, and 4, walking through the example I said was it snows Monday, we get priority 1 done, priority 2 gets finished by Wednesday or Thursday, then it snows again, we do priority 1 all over again. And they understood, once we walked them through the process, they felt more comfortable with it. So communication is everything, as Steve often says, and I do appreciate when he does say that, because it is very important. So the kudos to administration. We are making headway. We're not all together, as Mike said, but we are making headway. Some more contracted services will help us get our residents a little happier with the snow removal, and hopefully the weather will be more cooperative for us than it has been. This -40 below and then +7 2 days later, it's havoc on our ability to do our best for our citizens. So Steve, I see your hand up. Would you care to make a comment? Please do.
A little birdie told me that you guys had some extra Timbits last night. I hope you enjoyed them.
Yeah, which birdie did that? Okay, you gotta tell me who it was, because I couldn't tell from the toque and the mask. What Steve means is I'm sitting around 12 people in Tim's. It was awesome. And a gentleman walks over with a box of Timbits and says, "Have a good one, Bill," and walked away and didn't know who it was. And I couldn't get a chance to say hi before it was. You got to tell me who it was so I can thank that person. It was. They were all well received by our residents. not this discussion, but the Timbits was well received, and I really appreciate that. Thank you, Steve. Let me know who that's going to be. I appreciate that. So
I would just like to ask a quick question.
Yeah.
Were they Tim Biebs?
Yeah, some of them were actually. I only had one.
Okay.
Okay, 3.
How were they?
Well, I
Haven't
didn't need
tried 'em.
voice call support, but they were pretty good, I have to admit. Anyhow, all right, thanks, guys. At this point, the last item on the agenda is 11, adjournment. So at this time, I will call the meeting adjourned. Thank you for your attendance this evening, council, administration, those listening at home. Enjoy your evening. Thank you very much. See you on February 8th. Thank you.